Saudi Arabia is building an unbroken mirror, a city called The Line, stretching 170 kilometers across the desert, promising a green future for 9 million residents. But scientists watching NEOM warn its massive reflective walls and industrial cooling systems could raise regional temperatures by 3 degrees Celsius, triggering a man-made weather system with worldwide fallout. How is a futuristic eco-city turning into a potential climate engine? The answer is more alarming than anyone expected. The Line is not just another city. It's a structure on a scale the world has never seen. Stretching 170 kilometers, longer than the distance from New York to Philadelphia, this city slices through the Tabuk Desert in a perfectly straight line. Yet it's only 200 meters wide, about the length of 2 football fields side by side, and soars 500 meters into the sky, higher than the Empire State Building. The plan calls for 9 million people to live inside, packed into a space narrower than most city parks, but stacked vertically in a dense, layered grid. The cost is staggering: $500 billion, a sum that rivals the GDP of entire countries. Saudi Arabia's vision is to leapfrog the world's biggest cities in a single move, creating a metropolis powered entirely by renewable energy. The design promises a car-free, pollution-free existence, with residents able to travel from end to end in just 20 minutes using high-speed transit hidden beneath the city's base. The line's mirrored walls are meant to reflect the desert, making the city almost disappear into its surroundings. This isn't just for looks. The architects claim the reflective skin will help regulate temperatures inside, shielding residents from the relentless desert sun. The city's interior is divided into stacked layers: homes, offices, parks, and services, all arranged vertically, so that every resident is always within a 5-minute walk of nature or daily needs. NEOM's developers boast that 95% of the surrounding land will remain untouched, preserving the desert ecosystem. By building up instead of out, they argue, the line avoids the sprawl that consumes so much land in typical cities. The promise is a future where urban life treads lightly on the earth, with no need for cars and a footprint that leaves nature intact. But the numbers tell a story of extremes. A city with a footprint of just 34 square kilometers, containing a population similar to London, and walls of glass stretching farther than the eye can see. It's a vision as audacious as any in modern history, one that claims to solve the problems of urban life through sheer scale and radical design. A continuous wall of mirrors stretching for 170 kilometers is unlike anything ever built. The line's mirrored skin isn't just a bold architectural statement, it's a new force in the physics of heat and light. When sunlight strikes these vast vertical surfaces, not all of it bounces harmlessly away. The geometry of 2 parallel, highly reflective walls creates a corridor where solar energy is trapped and recirculated. On a summer afternoon, the desert sun pours in from above, but instead of being absorbed by sand or scattered by buildings, much of that light ricochets between the glass surfaces, amplifying the energy within the canyon. This effect, known to urban climatologists as the canyon effect, intensifies in ultra-narrow, high-walled spaces. In traditional cities, heat gets trapped between stone or concrete. Here, the scale and reflectivity multiply the impact. The line's 200-meter width and 500-meter height create a vertical slot that channels and focuses sunlight, especially during midday when the angle is steepest. Even small imperfections or dust on the mirrors can scatter light sideways, adding to the thermal load. Wind, which normally cools desert landscapes, behaves differently in this artificial canyon. The tall mirrored walls disrupt natural airflow, slowing breezes and sometimes redirecting them upwards, away from street level. On calm days, hot air lingers inside the corridor, unable to escape. At night, the heat radiated from the glass and the ground keeps temperatures elevated, preventing the usual desert cooling that many plants and animals rely on. The city's design, meant to shield residents from the desert's extremes, may instead create a zone where heat accumulates relentlessly. Initial climate models run by advisory scientists warned that the combination of radiative trapping and blocked airflow could push local temperatures as much as 3 degrees Celsius above the surrounding desert. The risk isn't just theoretical. Similar, though smaller effects have been documented in dense city districts worldwide, but never at this magnitude or with this much mirrored surface. The line's mirrored corridor doesn't just reflect the desert, it remakes it, changing how energy moves, how air flows, and how heat is stored. The result is an artificial microclimate, one that may be hotter and harder to cool than the desert it was meant to conquer. Inside the line, the machinery needed to keep millions comfortable in the desert is almost as monumental as the city itself. At the heart of the system are district cooling plants, industrial-scale facilities designed to chill water and circulate it through every floor, every home, and every workspace. Each of these plants is rated for up to 600 megawatts of cooling power, with some tenders specifying modules as large as 698 megawatts. For scale, a single module delivers enough cooling capacity to serve an entire mid-sized city. The largest plants in the pipeline are engineered for 200,000 refrigeration tons, translating to roughly 703 megawatts, more than the peak summer demand of many European capitals. The numbers quickly become staggering. A 600 megawatt plant recirculates over 33,000 liters of water every second, with daily makeup water needs in the tens of thousands of cubic meters. Multiple plants will be spaced along the line, their combined output measured not in kilowatts, but in gigawatts. The efficiency of these chillers is high by industry standards, with a coefficient of performance between 6 and 7. That means for every unit of electricity consumed, 6 or 7 units of cooling are delivered. But even with best-in-class technology, enormous amounts of heat must be rejected to the desert air. The way the math works, for each megawatt of cooling delivered, at least 1 to 1.2 megawatts of heat are dumped outside. During peak load, the waste heat from all the plants together could reach 12,000 megawatts by 2030 and up to 30,000 megawatts at full build-out, an output on par with the total energy needs of a small country. The cooling towers and heat exchangers clustered along the city's spine form a hidden backbone of pipes, pumps, and turbines, working day and night to fight the relentless desert sun. Procurement records show tenders for district cooling modules of 25,000 to 200,000 refrigeration tons, with phased ramp-up from pilot plants in 2025 to massive arrays by 2045. Each module is engineered for redundancy, extreme heat waves, and the dense layered occupancy of the line's vertical grid. These are not ordinary building chillers. They are industrial giants, designed for a city that never opens a window. As one independent analyst put it, this is cooling on a planetary scale. The machinery is as much a part of the line as the mirrored walls themselves. The line's promise of sustainability depends on a hidden engine: water. In a desert with almost no rainfall, every drop for drinking, cooling, and cleaning must be manufactured from the sea. That means desalination plants on a scale rarely attempted, drawing in Red Sea water, stripping out the salt, and discharging what's left as hot, concentrated brine. The numbers are staggering. A single large desalination facility supporting the line can push out up to 350,000 cubic meters of brine every day. But this isn't just salty water. It leaves the plant at temperatures up to 8 degrees Celsius above the intake, carrying away the waste heat from both the desalination process and the city's cooling systems. Engineering estimates put the total thermal output from brine discharge alone at nearly 10 gigawatts, comparable to the waste heat from a cluster of nuclear reactors. That heat doesn't vanish. It enters the shallow Red Sea, raising local water temperatures by as much as 2 or 3 degrees in the immediate outfall zone. Marine scientists warn that this could disrupt fragile coral reefs and alter local currents, but the real danger lies in the feedback loop forming between the city, the sea, and the atmosphere. Here's how the loop works. As the city heats up, demand for cooling spikes. Cooling plants work harder, generating more waste heat. The desalination plants, which supply both drinking water and cooling water, dump hotter brine into the sea. Warmer seawater makes the cooling process less efficient, so chillers must work even harder, pushing out even more heat. With each cycle, the system amplifies itself. More heat, more cooling, more brine, and rising temperatures in both air and water. One independent analyst described the situation bluntly. You're not just cooling the city, you're heating the entire coastline. And once you start that loop, it's hard to stop. The risk is not a single catastrophic event, but a slow, relentless ratcheting of temperatures. Over months and years, this artificial heat engine could tip local climates into new, unstable patterns. Unlike traditional cities, where waste heat dissipates over sprawling suburbs, the line concentrates its thermal output along a narrow corridor and a single stretch of shoreline. The result is a focused, persistent injection of heat into both land and sea. Scientists tracking these numbers warn that without intervention, the feedback could spiral, creating a zone where cooling the city means steadily raising the temperature of everything around it. The system, designed to create comfort for millions, may instead lock itself into a cycle of self-heating with consequences that reach far beyond the city's mirrored walls. Dr. Lina Al-Hassan spent 3 years as NEOM's chief sustainability advisor, working inside the project's highest circles. Her role was to assess the city's environmental risks and ensure the design met international standards for climate safety. Early in her tenure, she circulated an internal memo outlining a problem she called thermal feedback. The memo warned that the combination of mirrored walls and concentrated cooling would create a self-reinforcing loop, steadily raising temperatures inside and around the line. She highlighted the risk that heat, once trapped and recirculated, could overwhelm the city's cooling systems and spill outward, affecting wind and rainfall patterns in the region. The advisory memo, dated March 2021, included a stark warning. Without mitigation, modeled scenarios show local temperature increases exceeding 2.5 degrees Celsius, with potential impacts on prevailing wind and precipitation cycles. She urged management to commission independent modeling and to publish the findings for peer review. Instead, the memo was quietly filed away. Project leaders insisted their own consultants had the situation under control, and no public statement was made. By late 2022, Al-Hassan's concerns had grown. She submitted a resignation letter referencing unaddressed thermal feedback risks and the lack of transparency around environmental data. The letter also cited pressure to sign a non-disclosure agreement barring her from discussing the project's climate impacts with outside researchers. She declined to comment publicly, but colleagues recall her frustration at what she described as a culture of silence. Other advisory scientists face similar constraints. Non-disclosure clauses, legal threats, and travel restrictions kept most from sharing their findings outside Saudi Arabia. Requests for independent review of NEOM's climate modeling were routinely denied. In one internal email, Al-Hassan warned that failure to address these risks now could lock the city into a cycle of escalating heat and environmental stress. The phrase thermal feedback became a quiet shorthand among the advisory team, a problem that everyone recognized but few felt empowered to confront. Memos circulated privately, warning of the dangers of unchecked heat accumulation and the potential for artificial weather systems to form along the line. Yet the official project narrative remained unchanged. NEOM was a model of environmental stewardship, and any suggestion of risk was dismissed as alarmist or premature. Within NEOM's walls, the scientific debate was never allowed to reach the public. The city's future would be shaped not by open inquiry, but by the priorities of those determined to see it built at any cost. Thermal maps from NASA's MODIS and ESA's Sentinel-3 satellites began to show something unusual along the northern edge of Saudi Arabia. Over the course of 3 years, analysts tracked a growing band of elevated surface temperatures that traced the length of NEOM's construction zone. At first, these patterns matched what you'd expect from any large-scale earthworks in the desert. Bare ground heats up faster than undisturbed sand. But as the mirrored walls rose and the cooling plants ramped up, the anomaly persisted through the seasons, lingering even after the sun set. Remote sensing teams flagged the trend in internal reports. While the data stopped short of confirming a permanent 3-degree spike, the pattern was clear. Localized heat zones, stretching beyond the city's footprint, were becoming a fixture in satellite imagery. Some maps showed temperature differences of up to 2 degrees Celsius above historical averages, with irregular shapes extending toward the Red Sea and, on some nights, drifting northward toward the Egyptian border. The cause wasn't just the construction itself. Analysts pointed to the combined effects of mirrored surfaces, concentrated waste heat, and altered airflow, all amplifying the natural heat of the region. For people living hundreds of kilometers away, these changes weren't abstract. In the Nile Delta, Egyptian farmers began noticing shifts in the growing season. One farmer described how the land bakes before the season starts now, with heat waves arriving weeks earlier than remembered. Crops wilted faster and rainfall patterns grew less predictable. We lose half the crop before rain comes. Sometimes the storms ruin what rain remains. Local weather records showed a steady rise in nighttime temperatures, echoing the satellite data from across the sea. Across the Mediterranean, Sicilian olive growers faced their own challenges. Droughts grew longer, and sudden violent storms battered groves that once relied on gentle seasonal rain. A grower near Syracuse recalled, "The old rhythms are gone. The air feels different, drier, and the storms come out of nowhere." Regional meteorologists began comparing notes, finding that the timing of these shifts matched the period when NEOM's mirrored corridor and cooling infrastructure became operational. Scientists caution that proving a direct link is difficult. Natural climate cycles, global warming, and land use changes all play a role. But the convergence of satellite evidence and lived experience is hard to ignore. For those whose livelihoods depend on stable weather, the sense of unease is growing. The data may be debated, but the disruption is already being felt, carried on hot winds that know no borders. The line's 170-kilometer mirrored structure, with a $500 billion budget and plans to house 9 million people, stands as one of the largest urban projects ever attempted. Independent analysts have documented cooling plant capacities exceeding 600 megawatts and estimated brine heat outputs up to 10 gigawatts thermal. Internal memos and resignation letters revealed that some scientists warned of artificial heat feedback and potential regional climate disruption. Satellite imagery and farmer accounts point to unusual warming patterns, but no peer-reviewed study or public data set confirms a sustained 3 degrees Celsius temperature increase linked directly to NEOM. Much of the underlying engineering data remains classified or protected by non-disclosure agreements. Today, the debate over the line's environmental impact continues among researchers, affected communities, and policymakers. What is clear? NEOM's scale and ambition have set new precedents, forcing the world to confront the risks and the limits of reshaping nature at this magnitude.